Can we have the benefits of women in the clergy? A review of the writings for an answer. This paper is co-authored by myself, Jon Childs, and my wife, Karin Childs. The paper has a foreword and 4 major sections.
The first section is a review of key numbers in the writings, often used in arguments against women in the ministry. The second section is a wider look at the writings in regards to the clergy. The book Conjugial Love makes specific statements about husbands and wives, and then generalizes about men and women. The third section of this paper looks at how these numbers might be applied to a male and female clergy, and what the potential benefits might be. The fourth and final section of the paper addresses 2 final arguments that are used against women as ministers, then discusses next steps and concluding remarks.
Now for the foreword. This paper has 5 assumptions or positions from which it is written. So the first is that men in Swedenborg's time, including Swedenborg, did not understand women's integral role regarding wisdom. And the second is that women are equal to men in their ability to regenerate, to learn truth, and learn to do good. And the third is that church policy should not be based on examples used in numbers in the writings, but rather on the main points or the main doctrinal points of numbers. And that the state of the church has changed a lot for the better since the writings were published. And there are a lot of statements about husbands and wives made in the book Conjugial Love, and they're often then generalized to men and women. And this approach is effective and should be considered even when the generalization is not made in order to help us understand the benefits of men and women working together.
Now we'll look more closely at each of these 5 positions. That men in Swedenborg's time, including Swedenborg, did not understand women's integral role regarding wisdom can be seen in reading Conjugial Love 56, where we find Swedenborg in a garden near the Temple of Wisdom, in which are smaller buildings that are replicas of the temple. These buildings have wise men in them, and Swedenborg approaches one and is greeted by a male receptionist and welcomed in. Swedenborg notices that the building he is in is divided into 2 sections, and he asks the receptionist why it is divided.
So the receptionist replies, "I am not alone. My wife is with me." And Swedenborg replies, "I know you are wise, but what does a wise man or wisdom have to do with a woman?" So the receptionist becomes annoyed with Swedenborg's question. He calls out to the other wise men in the surrounding buildings. "Our visitor here says he wants to know what a wise man or wisdom has to do with a woman." And they all laugh at Swedenborg's question.
Besides the humor evident in this number, the number has some very important messages. The first is the point of the number. What is a wise man apart from a woman? A woman is integral to the formation of wisdom in a man. Without a woman, a man is a dunce, according to Conjugial Love 56, section 4. Another important point is that Swedenborg was a very wise and deep thinker, and yet his question, "What does a woman have to do with wisdom?" drove wise angel men to laugh, because he was so far off the mark, so far from the truth. We propose that this doctrine, that women are key to wisdom, is the center of the question as to whether women should be included in the clergy. In the second half of this paper, we will see how many conjugal love numbers make the jump from husbands to men in general, and from wives to women in general. This paper will make the assertion that the jump is appropriate in the issue of the ordination of women. Women, working side by side with men, will be an integral part and key to wise doctrine being developed for the organized new church.
Women are equal to men in their ability to regenerate, to learn truth, and to learn to do well. This can be seen in Conjugial Love 122, where it says that from the marriage of good and truth that emanates and flows in from the Lord, a person, man or woman, acquires truth, to which the Lord joins good, and in this way the church is formed in the person by the Lord.
Church policy should not be based on examples used in numbers in the writings, but rather on the main doctrinal points of the numbers. We have no specific quote to back this up, but we base it instead on common sense. Examples change over time, while the doctrinal truth or the main point of numbers stays unchanging through time.
That the state of the church has changed a lot since the writings were written can be seen by looking at numbers that describe how bad things were when the writings were published.
Also, the effect of the writings on the world is evident in the incredible external changes that have rapidly taken place since that time, including significant improvement in the lives and education of women. Regarding how bad the state of the church was at the time the writings were written.
So we look at Conjugial Love number 79, in which an angel says to Swedenborg, "You would like to see the age that followed these ancient ages and what it is still like today." And the scene described, it was in the number, it was dark and decrepit and unorganized, surrounded by poisonous fumes and fierce, dirty beasts. And people lived in shacks, and they saw no difference between a wife and a harlot. And they were hostile towards any suggestion of applying religion to life. And, quote, "New people keep coming from earth to this region every day, and previous inhabitants are by turns removed and cast down." I also see in CL 80, the church was infested by evils and falsities. And Swedenborg was told that the end was now come. And then in Conjugial Love 81, then describes the impending drastic changes where the Lord will revive conjugal love.
Though here in the 21st century we could still see remnants of that iron mixed with clay phase, one can't help but also see all the drastic spiritual improvements as human beings search for more purpose and meaning in their lives and in their relationships. The Second Coming has had its effects, and we are living in very different times, both spiritually and naturally, than the times that Swedenborg was describing.
The statements about husbands and wives in the book Conjugial Love are often generalized to men and women, will be seen in section 3 of this paper. It is mentioned here because it's a key assumption of this paper that applying the teachings about the interaction of wives and husbands to the interaction of female and male leadership in the church would lead to many benefits. This practice would allow us to use the powerful and effective dynamic of a partnership of men and women in the development of doctrine for our church. Women inspire men to pursue wisdom, and that dynamic is used in support of women in ministry in this paper. So now we'll have a review of the key numbers in the writings to do with women in the ministry. Starting with the book Conjugial Love, which is the book in the writings that has the most statements specifically about women.
Conjugial Love 125 on the surface might be used in an argument against women priests by saying a woman is dependent on a man to have the church, and that she would not be a good, independent thinking priest, able to write sermons on her own. The direct quote is,
"In the case of married couples, the church is implanted first in the man, and through the man in his wife, because the man with his understanding acquires truths that the church teaches, and the wife acquires it from the man. But if the reverse takes place, it is not according to order. Nevertheless, this sometimes happens, but only in the case of men who are either not lovers of wisdom, and so are not part of the church, or who hang like slaves on the bidding of their wives."
But this argument assumes that women are somehow less than whole people in regards to being able to form a church within them. It is part of the beautiful concept of conjugial love that husbands and wives, in addition to being individual people on their own, also join forces to fill in missing parts of each other and form a whole new joint person or angel as a result of their partnership.
Both husband and wife work together to form the new angel, each being dependent on the other, yet whole and independent at the same time. In Conjugial Love 121 and 122, we see the independent wholeness, that men and women are whole people in regards to having the church formed within them. The title of Conjugial Love 122 shows this. From the marriage of good and truth that emanates and flows in from the Lord, a person acquires truth, to which the Lord joins good, and in this way the church is formed in the person by the Lord.
From this baseline independent state, we have the case of a married couple and the dynamics of the church they form together as they become of one mind. From the final paragraph in CL 122.
In addition, man is born with the faculty of knowing, understanding, and becoming wise, and the female was created through the truth of the male and is formed into a love of it more and more after marriage. It follows that she also receives her husband's truth into herself and joins it to her good. So we added the underlines for emphasis. The church being formed in the married pair is in addition to the church they have within themselves independently and individually. The church they have together is something that the wife also has in addition to her own church in her own understanding. She has a church on her own, but once married, she needs a partnership with her husband to be able to form a new additional church that is a culmination of the joining of their two independent minds into one.
Together they can pool their resources to form a better and more whole church as a married pair. Only by combining their natures does the church of a single conjugal pair angel become formed, and this new joint church has each spouse equally depending upon the other.
Conjugial Love 125 makes clear that a husband has to take a lead role in this new combined church. As is typical, a man can be slow in caring about wisdom at a young age, the kind of wisdom that has to be centered around truly loving his wife. A woman can't push this into a marriage and have the magic of Conjugial Love's church really form.
CL 125 is indicating that a husband has to take the initiative and choose to start caring about and pursuing the truth of faith and the goodness of life. Then the wife, who has been waiting for this, can love his efforts and can add this to the church she already has. Only then does their joint church begin. The individual church and the combined church are also being described in Conjugial Love 62 and 63.
In CL 62, because the church in a person is a marriage of good and truth. Then in CL 63, however, the way the church is formed in two married partners. The word however being like the word also above. The church that is formed in the marriage depends upon the husband taking the first steps as described above, and then the wife can respond with all she has to offer as well.
Therefore, a woman can make a fine priest, either before marriage with her own independent church, or after marriage with the additional understanding and insight that is formed from being a part of a couple's growing combined church.
Conjugial Love 163 to 165.
The numbers in Conjugial Love 163 to 165 on the surface might be used in an argument against women priests by saying men have an intellectual wisdom that is used for occupations, including being clergymen. This intellectual wisdom that they have ascends to a light that women do not have, and women keep silent when men are talking about these types of male intellectual things. The main doctrinal point in this set of numbers can be seen best by looking at the title sentence in Conjugial Love 163.
A wife's union with her husband's intellectual wisdom takes place inwardly, but with his moral wisdom outwardly.
The union of a wife with her husband's wisdom, and in general of women with men's wisdom, is with two types of wisdom men have, intellectual wisdom and moral wisdom. And the union is more inward or less obvious with intellectual wisdom, and more outward or more obvious with men's moral wisdom.
Intellectual wisdom has to do with the understanding alone. Moral wisdom has to do with understanding as applied to life. In CL 163, we learn that intellectual wisdom has the general elements of knowledge, intelligence, and wisdom, and in particular, rationality, judgment, genius, learning, and sagacity.
One type of knowledge described is the knowledge that's learned in order to perform an occupation. Everyone, male and female, can learn knowledge, which consists of facts and skills.
Examples in CL 163 of occupations for which there is occupational knowledge are clergymen, civil officers, judges, physicians, pharmacists, soldiers, sailors, craftsmen, workmen, and farmers. Then Conjugial Love 163 lists fields of study that engage intellectual wisdom, such as philosophy, physics, geometry, mechanics, chemistry, astronomy, law, political science, ethics, and history.